All right, hey everyone. If you're gearing up for that CCSP cert, you know it's a beast, right?
Yeah.
Like so much to cover.
Yeah, for sure.
But we're tackling one of the, well, I think most interesting parts today, emerging technologies.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a deep dive, get right into the essentials of this domain.
Sounds good.
So not just like what the words mean, but like why you need to care about this stuff if you're going to be, a cloud security pro.
Exactly. Yeah, the exam, it's all about applying this stuff, connecting these technologies to the real world. You can't just memorize a bunch of definitions.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump right in. The first one, everyone's talking about it, artificial intelligence, AI.
Right.
But what's the real deal for cloud security? What does it actually mean for us?
Well, first, we've got to, I think it's helpful to understand that most of what we're calling AI these days is actually powered by machine learning.
Okay.
So AI is this kind of big idea of machines that, act like they can think like humans. But machine learning is like the actual tools and techniques that let them learn from data.
So AI is the vision, machine learning is how we get there.
Exactly, yeah. And for the CCSP, you'll need to know about the 3 types of analytics that fall under machine learning: descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive.
Okay, descriptive, I feel like that's kind of straightforward.
Right.
Like understanding what's already happened in the past.
Yeah, that's it. You're basically analyzing past data to understand your security posture.
Right.
But then you've got predictive analytics, and that's where it gets really cool.
Oh, okay.
Now you're using that past data to try and forecast potential security threats.
So like imagine you could predict a data breach before it even happens.
Exactly.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, it would be pretty amazing. And then prescriptive takes it even a step further.
Okay.
So now, instead of just predicting threats, you're suggesting specific actions to mitigate them.
So like having a security advisor that tells you exactly what to do to stop a problem before it even starts.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And what's really exciting is how cloud computing has kind of supercharged machine learning.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, you have the scalability, the on-demand computing power of the cloud that lets us build these really complex, sophisticated machine learning models. Plus, cloud providers are offering all sorts of new AI-powered security tools.
So it's like cloud and machine learning are the perfect match.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's move on to another buzzy topic.
Mm-hmm.
Blockchain.
All right.
So I know it's, the thing behind Bitcoin and all that, but how does this immutable ledger actually apply to cloud security? It always seemed kind of abstract to me.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But the core concept is actually pretty simple.
Okay.
Imagine a digital record system that's distributed across a whole bunch of computers. So instead of one central place, it's spread out.
Okay.
And they're constantly verifying themselves. So it's designed to be tamper-proof and transparent. Really good for situations where trust and auditability are really important.
So instead of having one point of failure, you have the data spread out and it's always being checked.
Exactly. And this has huge implications for cloud security. Think about tamper-proof audit logs, secure software supply chains. You could even use it for access control. Imagine every action, recorded and verifiable.
Yeah.
Much harder for an attacker to cover their tracks.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see how valuable that would be, especially in the cloud, where data integrity is so crucial.
Exactly. And the distributed nature of the cloud, it just makes it the perfect environment for blockchain technology.
So they're like made for each other.
Yeah, pretty much. The cloud provides the infrastructure for those decentralized tamper-proof systems.
So is it fair to say like blockchain is kind of like the ultimate security guard for the cloud?
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Okay. Let's shift gears to something that affects, everyone. Internet of Things, IoT, it's everywhere, right?
It really is.
Smart homes, industrial sensors, but like, is it all really secure?
That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, in reality, a lot of IoT devices have these inherent security challenges.
Yeah.
The software is hard to update. A lot of them are directly connected to our home networks.
Right.
And they're always talking to cloud services.
Yeah, every new smart device we get, it feels like another potential entry point for hackers,
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And remember that Jeep hacking incident a few years back?
Yeah.
Pretty scary, right?
Yeah, it was a big wake-up call.
Yeah, it really showed how vulnerable these devices can be and, the consequences when security isn't taken seriously.
So what does this mean for cloud security specifically?
Well, it means we need to be thinking beyond just the cloud environment itself. We have to think about all these devices that are connecting to it. They can become entry points, bypassing our traditional defenses.
So it's like we're building this awesome fortress in the cloud, but we're leaving all the doors and windows unlocked.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. So for the CCSP exam, you have to know how to deal with this, right? How to mitigate those IoT security challenges.
Yeah, makes sense. Strong device security, secure communication, and just, being on the lookout for new threats all the time.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm seeing a theme here. Secure the cloud, secure the edge, secure everything in between.
You got it.
All right, what about containers?
Okay.
They're like virtual machines on a diet, right?
That's a good way to think about it, yeah.
So how are they changing the game for security?
Well, they're these lightweight packages for applications.
Okay.
And unlike virtual machines, they share the host operating system. So they're more efficient, much more portable.
Okay, but does sharing that environment, does that make them riskier?
It can, yeah, if you're not careful. So knowing how to secure containers, that's a big part of the CCSP exam. You got to know how to secure the images themselves, how to keep them isolated from each other, manage access control within a containerized environment. It's a whole specialized area.
Okay, so container security, it's like its own little world within cloud security.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's changing all the time, too, so you got to stay on top of it.
All right, let's get a little sci-fi here.
Okay.
What about quantum computing? Is that a real threat right now, or is that still, theoretical?
Mostly theoretical, at least for now. But the potential for disruption is huge. Imagine a computer that can just crack our current encryption in seconds.
Okay, that's a little scary.
Yeah, it's something to be aware of, but no need to panic just yet.
So stay calm and keep learning.
Exactly.
Pretty good advice for the CCSP in general, actually.
Speaking of staying ahead of the curve, what about edge computing?
Right.
With all this IoT stuff exploding, how do we secure data when the cloud is too far away? Physically too far.
That's where edge computing comes in.
Yeah.
Basically, you put the processing power directly on those remote sensors.
Okay.
So you don't have to rely on a constant connection to the cloud.
So, mini data centers out on the edge of the network, handling things locally. Exactly. It's great for both performance and security, especially when bandwidth is limited or there's high latency.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But how does it tie back into cloud security specifically? Isn't edge computing kind of, separate from the cloud?
Well, think of it more like extending the cloud out to the edge.
Okay.
The cloud still has a role to play. You might process some data at the edge, but then it might need to go back to the cloud for storage or further analysis.
Right.
So securing that data as it moves back and forth, that's crucial.
So it's about understanding how those two environments work together.
Yeah.
And making sure security covers both.
Exactly. And that's what the CCSP exam is all about, right? Thinking about security holistically, considering everything.
All right, on to another cool sounding technology, confidential computing.
Okay.
I'm curious about this one. What's the big idea?
Well, it takes data protection to a whole new level. It keeps data encrypted even when it's being used.
Oh, okay.
It's like having a vault for your data, even when it's in memory.
Okay, I'm hooked. How does that even work? That sounds like magic.
Not magic, but some really clever technology. It uses things called trusted execution environments, or TEEs.
Okay.
Basically, secure areas within a processor that are totally isolated from everything else.
So even if, someone hacks the server, they can't get to the data in those TEEs, like a fortress inside a fortress.
Exactly. It's a level of protection you just don't get with normal encryption. Even the cloud provider can't access the data while it's being used in those secure enclaves.
Wow, that's a game changer. So how does this connect back to the CCSP?
Well, the exam wants you to show that you really get cloud security principles.
Right.
And this is a great example of how those principles are applied in the real world.
Okay.
It's not just about firewalls and intrusion detection anymore. It's about protecting data at every single stage.
So it's like security baked into the core of the cloud, not just an afterthought.
You got it. And that's a key takeaway for the CCSP exam, that whole idea of a comprehensive, integrated approach to security.
Okay, last one for this part of our deep dive, DevSecOps.
Right.
So we talked about securing data, infrastructure, but what about the actual process of developing software?
Yeah, that's where DevSecOps comes in. It's all about integrating security into the entire DevOps lifecycle, from the very beginning all the way through to deployment and beyond.
So you're talking about making security everyone's job from day one, not just something you tack on at the end.
Exactly. You have developers, operations teams, security folks all working together, automating security checks, using security as code. It's a whole different way of thinking about security.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this is important for the CCSP. It's about adapting security to the speed of the cloud.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Because everything moves so fast.
Yeah, DevSecOps is recognizing that security can't be this static, separate thing. It has to be woven into the development process, constantly evolving and adapting.
This has been a whirlwind, man.
Yeah, it has.
So many cutting edge technologies.
hmm
What are some of the big takeaways our listeners should keep in mind as they're prepping for this CCSP?
Well, first off, just knowing the definitions isn't enough.
Right.
You got to understand the why and how and be able to apply that to real-world problems.
Right. Absolutely. What else?
And remember, this stuff is always evolving, right?
Yeah.
What's bleeding edge today is going to be normal tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true.
So continuous learning is essential.
Okay, so to wrap up this part of the deep dive, what's the one big question our listeners should be thinking about?
I'd say as all these technologies mature and start to overlap, what new challenges are going to pop up?
Okay.
And how will the role of a cloud security pro need to change to keep up?
Okay, good stuff. Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll keep going down this rabbit hole of cloud security and emerging technologies.
It really is amazing to think about how all these different emerging technologies, they're all kind of connected, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not just like separate things happening. They're all building blocks that are shaping the whole future of cloud security.
Yeah, it's like watching a whole new ecosystem evolving, right in front of us.
Exactly.
And speaking of evolving, let's circle back to edge computing for a second.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that it's great for situations where the cloud is, physically too far away.
Right.
Can you give us some real-world examples of how that's actually, making things more secure?
Sure. Yeah. Think about a manufacturing plant.
Okay.
Hundreds of sensors collecting data in real time.
Right.
If you had to send all that back to the cloud for processing, you'd have all these latency issues.
Yeah.
It could even affect how quickly critical systems can respond.
Right.
But with edge computing, you can analyze the data and act on it right there on the factory floor.
Okay.
So it's more efficient and more secure.
So it's like instead of having one security guard way off in a central command center,
Right.
you have a guard posted at every single entry point.
Yeah, exactly. Or think about healthcare. You have these wearable devices
Okay.
monitoring patients' vital signs, right?
Right.
With edge computing, they could analyze that data locally and trigger an alert right away if something's wrong.
Wow.
Potentially even save lives.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. It really shows how edge computing is blurring the lines between the physical and digital worlds,
Yeah, it is.
and creating all these new security challenges we have to think about.
Exactly. And for the CCSP exam, you have to understand not just edge computing itself, but how it works with the cloud.
Right.
How do you get the data back and forth securely?
Yeah.
How do you keep your security policies consistent across both environments? That kind of thing.
Okay, so it's not about replacing the cloud. It's about extending it out to the edge and making sure everything is secure.
Exactly. It's a whole new frontier for cloud security.
Okay, let's go back to confidential computing for a minute.
All right.
You were talking about Ts, those secure enclaves inside a processor. Can you explain how those actually work? I mean, I'm not a techie, so.
Sure. Yeah. Imagine you have some really sensitive data, like a customer's credit card number.
Okay.
With normal encryption, it's protected while it's stored and transmitted, right?
All right.
But when an application needs to use it, you have to decrypt it.
Okay.
That's
yeah.
where Ts come in. They create this safe space
All right.
where the data can be decrypted and used, but it never leaves the protection of that T.
So it's like a safe inside the computer.
Yeah, a good way to think about it. Even if someone hacks the server, they can't get to that data.
Okay, that's pretty amazing. So what about the cloud provider? Do they still have access to the data inside those TEs?
That's the really cool part. With confidential computing, even the cloud provider can't access the data while it's being processed in a T.
Whoa.
Gives organizations a lot more control over their data security.
So it's like putting the power back in the hands of the data owner, instead of having to just trust the cloud provider completely.
Exactly, yeah. And for the CCSP, it's important to understand how this is changing things, how it's changing the whole cloud security landscape. It's going to be big.
Okay, I'm convinced. Let's talk more about DevSecOps. We touched on it earlier, but I think it's so important.
It is.
It's like a whole new way of thinking about security in the cloud.
Yeah, I agree. It's about breaking down those walls between the development team, the operations team, and the security team.
Right.
Integrating security into everything you do.
You talked about shifting left before. Could you, like, explain what that means in plain English?
Sure, it just means you're moving security considerations earlier in the process.
Okay.
Traditionally, security was something you did at the end, like a separate step.
Yeah.
But with DevSecOps, it's everyone's responsibility from the very beginning.
Okay.
So you're building security in, not bolting it on as an afterthought.
So it's not just about, like, tools and tech. It's about creating a whole culture of security
Exactly.
where everyone's on board.
And that cultural shift is a big part of what the CCSP exam is looking for.
Okay.
You have to understand how to build security into the process, how to automate testing, how to make it a continuous thing.
Man, this has been eye-opening. I'm really starting to see how all these emerging technologies, they're all connected, and how they're shaping the future of cloud security.
They really are. And for anyone studying for the CCSP exam, understanding this stuff is absolutely crucial.
Stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll wrap things up and give you some final tips for conquering the CCSP exam. All right, welcome back, everyone. For this final part of our deep dive on emerging technologies, I'm telling you, my head is spinning after all that.
Yeah.
It's so clear that the CCSP exam, it's not just about knowing these technologies. It's about, like, connecting them to the real world,
Yeah, absolutely. The CCSP, it's not about memorizing facts. It's about understanding how these things are changing security.
Right. Like, it's one thing to define blockchain, but it's another thing to know how it actually impacts, like, day-to-day security operations.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think a great example of that is the whole shared responsibility model.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
That's like the foundation of cloud security, And it's even more important when you're talking about these cutting-edge technologies.
Yeah, because the lines get blurry.
Right. They do.
Like with edge computing, who's responsible for what when the data is not even in the cloud?
Right, exactly. Let's say you're using edge computing to process sensitive data. It might be happening outside the traditional cloud,
Yeah.
but it's still your data. And ultimately, you're responsible for securing it, no matter where it is.
So you need a security plan that covers everything, the cloud, the edge, the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And that kind of leads into another big theme we've been talking about, continuous learning.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
These technologies, they're changing so fast. And the threats are changing even faster, I think.
It's a constant race, right? You finally figure out one thing and then boom,
Right.
there's a new vulnerability, a new attack vector.
Yeah, you got to stay on top of it. You got to be curious, always learning, always adapting.
Yeah, the CCSP is a great start, but it's just the beginning, right?
It really is.
Something we haven't talked much about, but I think it's so important, is communication and collaboration.
Okay.
We mentioned DevSecOps, but it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
You can't just be a lone wolf in cloud security anymore.
No way. It takes a team, for sure.
Developers, operations, security, even the business people, everyone has to be on the same page when it comes to protecting data.
And you got to break down those silos.
Yeah,
That's so important. Build a culture where everyone understands security.
right. Security first culture.
Yeah. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. Don't just focus on the technical side of things.
Okay.
Think about the big picture, the broader impact of these emerging technologies.
What do you mean?
Like, how are they changing our lives? How are they changing businesses?
Right.
What are the ethical questions we need to be asking? How do we make sure these technologies are being used responsibly?
Wow, those are big questions.
They are. And that's what makes this field so interesting.
It's not just about bits and bytes. It's about people.
Exactly.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I hope our listeners feel like they can tackle the CCSP and really anything that comes after.
Me too. And remember, never stop learning. Stay curious, stay engaged, stay ahead of the game.
Great advice. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into emerging technologies. Good luck on your CCSP journey, everyone.